The following is a presentation of Muddy River News.
And welcome to Muddy River News This Week. I'm Bob Goff. Our program is furnished by Harvey's Furniture. We are talking with Assistant State's Attorneys in Adams County, Ntw Jones and Keck, fresh off the Tim Bleefnick murder trial, and we will try to give them some time off after this is all said and done. But we said we just still got a couple of loose ends to tie up. Thank you both.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
After a day of reflection on that ordeal and that trial, Josh, do you have any thoughts as we go into this?
Just that it's not a happy day. Like we talked about yesterday, at the end of the day, nothing we do is ever going to bring back Becky, and nothing we do is ever going to prevent those three boys from losing their mother and now their father. And it's not. Somebody asked me, "Do you think justice was done?" And there's no justice for that. There is absolutely no justice in this case. But what we could do, and what I hope we were able to do, was at least give a sense of resolution and finality to the family.
Laura, when you look at this and in the whole case, with everything that happened there's contentious divorces and there's contentious divorces, and there's times where the man or even the woman or the man, either one, they're fearful or whatever. At some point, you would think that, are we going to start taking some of these things a little more seriously?
Well, I told somebody, I said, the problem is our system does not allow for people to get help for emotional abuse or abuse that's not physical. Because I'll tell you, I don't have any evidence, I don't know of anything where Timothy Bleefnick, before he killed Becky Bleefnick, ever physically hurt her. But I certainly believe there was emotional abuse, there was absolutely power and control, which is what domestic violence is. And unfortunately, our system does not allow those people to get help until something physical happens.
Yeah, it's definitely a flaw in the system, that's for sure. Well, let's go back to the 99 days now as we record this. Were you on the scene that night?
I was.
Were you on the scene later on? Okay, but on the scene that night, when you walk in there, what was your first reaction?
Well, I think it was interesting. I had just finished a meeting with another victim, and it was actually with Ms. Keck, and I got a call around 4 o'clock to go to a homicide scene, and they gave me the address, and my first response was, wait, where am I going? Because that's not an address that I would typically associate with a homicide. And I drove there and talked to some of the officers outside and walked up and saw what the jury saw. And all you could think of was what she had to go through. Because it was clear even at that time that somebody had hunted her down. This wasn't a random prowler. That this was someone who went there with a purpose, because they chased her down, they kicked in a door, and then they executed her on that floor.
Laura, Josh mentioned it in that part of town. So many cases that we have, whether they're on the east side of town, the west side of town, whether minorities are involved, whether male, woman, whatever. There are many cases that are as violent and as tragic that do not get that kind of attention. But they are just as important, correct?
Yes, and I will say that's one thing I hope the community realizes. This case was obviously really important. It was important for Becky, it was important for her family, but there are cases that we do every single day that don't get the attention. There are unfortunately people that are suffering, that are hurt. We have so many cases involving children, involving other women that have been domestically abused. I mean, this is a problem in our society, and I hope that people realize this is something that we as a community and society, we need to say no more. We are not going to allow people to be hurt this way. We're not going to allow this abuse to happen or say it's a family problem.
And again, when you look at the docket in the court, you walk into court and you see people of all ages, of all races, of all religions, and it's just something that again, the national media doesn't come to town. They seem to come to town more regularly than they used to, but they don't come to town normally. But here in this case, where this mother was tragically gunned down and left, her boys motherless, and now, as you said yesterday, essentially fatherless. can we, as Laura said, what can we do? What can we do to bring attention to, hey, this is a problem in every part of our community?
Domestic violence and domestic abuse and emotional abuse, physical abuse, it doesn't matter where you live. It can happen anywhere. Laura and I have had cases where the abuser was someone that was well known in the community. And where people who had a high socioeconomic status. And we've had cases where just the opposite. It doesn't matter what race you are, what color you are, how much money you make, what kind of car you drive, you can be a perpetrator or a victim of domestic violence. And domestic violence doesn't just mean a punch to the face. In fact, Laura and I have talked to so many victims that the emotional trauma, the emotional abuse, the power and control that people try to exercise over their partner is 1,000 times more damaging than the punch to the face. And it doesn't leave a mark. We've seen victims come into our office with black eyes and broken arms, but the trauma that they've received from the words that are used. Everybody says sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's so not true. Words hurt more than anything else, as we found out through the course of this trial. The things that people have said, not just about us, but about Ms. Schnock. Words matter. And people think that because we're on social media or because we're public figures, we don't read these things and they don't affect us. It's sad that even in a community like Quincy, we can't recognize the humanity in each of us.
Yeah, and like you said, when the national media comes swooping in, and the videos that were shown, and again, we aired and actually had some of the footage, some of the footage of Becky's body. We did our best to edit most of it out, but then at one point slipped through. As I said, it got by the goalie.
Absolutely.
And you called me, people were calling me about it, you called me about it, like, I'm not trying to tell you your job. I'm like, hey, we're working on it. So Randy fixed it, and then from then on out, we were meticulous. We don't, this is a small town. This is where we all live. We see each other shopping, we see each other. Josh and I might see each other at a bar sometime. So we want to be able to look each other in the eye and say, hey, we're professionals, we're doing the best job we can, we're not a bunch of assholes.
Just because you're on the opposite side of somebody doesn't mean that we can't be friends. Drew Schnock and Casey Schnock are two people that I'm proud to consider a friend of mine. And people say, well, how can you be friends with a defense attorney? It's their job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's their job. They're not bad people.
Yeah.
They were representing someone like they were constitutionally required to do. And I would hope that if I got in trouble, if I was accused by someone of committing a crime, that I would have an attorney that fought for me just as hard as Casey did.
Or the word narcissist. It's thrown around a lot. Do you think that this was one of those classic cases where this guy had those kind of tendencies?
I think he had the tendencies.
I'm not saying you're a doctor.
I'm definitely not a doctor. My sister's a social worker. We'll leave that. But what I will say is he definitely had the tendencies of what you do see in a domestic abuser. I can say that. I think, as I said, I don't think we have any evidence there was physical abuse, but you certainly could see how everything was slipping away from him. And that's where, the most dangerous time for a victim is when they leave. And in this case, everybody said, well, he filed for divorce. But that was part of his power and control, as he was going to file for divorce because she wasn't doing what he wanted. But really the continuances, not giving the gun back for 2 years. That was his way to keep control. And Josh and I said, I think the minute that he was probably already contemplating what could he do, but the minute he realized Ted Johnson was at that house on February 14th on Valentine's Day, and she was willing to do 50-50, she wasn't going to fight anymore for more child custody, he realized he no longer had control, and that's when he finally snapped.
When the foreperson said guilty, what went through your mind?
Well, so the funny thing is, we have little tricks that we can figure out what the verdict is before they actually read the verdict. And in this case, you count the number of papers that the judge has.
Okay.
So if there are 3 papers, we know that they've signed 3 guilty verdicts. And if there are only 2 papers, there were 2 not guilty verdicts. So when they said guilty, I already knew what the verdict was. Now, when I said all those 3 papers, it was a sense of, if you've not been a trial attorney before, it's hard to describe the amount of pressure that you feel every day. And I think I can speak for Laura. Every day since February 23rd, this case has weighed on us. There's been a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of long days, not just for us, but for everybody involved, Detective Cowick, Detective Eddie. And when I saw that there were 3 papers, it was just a sense that those bricks that were sitting on your shoulders rolled off.
And at the end, when you and the QPD officers went over to the family, or I saw you were starting to. That's when it was hitting you. I think.
It was. It absolutely was. You know, we went over there, and you know, because of how long the trial went, we really got to know them, and I will tell you, they were, the entire time, they were so amazing with us. Just, you know, you guys have it, because we told them, we couldn't tell them either. You know, it wasn't just the media, we didn't tell them, we didn't tell the family anything. And they wanted to know, and Josh told them from the beginning, we're not going to tell you things. After the case is over, we'll tell you whatever you want, but we can't tell you either. And they were so appreciative of what we did. And when Bill Postal turned to the family, or I'm sorry, the police, and thanked them, yeah, I was about to really lose it at that point.
When Bernie made, you know, when she broke down when they made the verdict, and Bill, you just see it was, and he was looking at Tim, and Tim wasn't reciprocating, obviously. But it was just, at that moment, that's when I was like, wow, this is, these people, while they're not going to get their daughter back, they're going to get some measure of comfort out of this.
We can only hope so. I hope that it provided a sense of closure and a sense of resolution, and at least the knowledge that the person that did it was held accountable for what he did.
We always talk about the wheels of justice moving slowly. They didn't move slow this time. Do you like the express lane? Do you want to keep this up? Let's just do this in and out in 90 days?
Let's be honest. If the SAFETY Act passes, we'll be doing this a lot more often.
That's true, yes.
You know, one of the interesting things about this case was we had to make a decision what we were going to do. Were we going to ask that he be held without bail and try this case in 90 days, or were we going to agree to some bail and run the risk that he could post that? And we had that conversation. Myself, Ms. Keck, Todd Eiler, our first assistant, Gary Farrell, Chief Yates, the detectives, we were all involved. And Laura and I said, we're happy to do this. We will do the work. We'll get this case ready. But we all have to be doing this together. If we're going to try this case in 90 days, it's going to take a complete team effort. And everybody said, we'll do whatever you need. And to a man, every person on that team.
And a woman, come on. Come on.
I said it so you could say that. Mm-hmm. So to a person,
there you go.
Every person on this team worked so many hours.
Have you celebrated your anniversary yet?
Sorry,
I went to
William.
my kids' baseball and softball games last night.
There you go.
And my daughter was very happy.
That's so you guys are able to get back to normalcy.
Can I tell you? I want to tell you this story that Miss Keck shared with me yesterday about her daughter Savannah. And Savannah and I are very good friends. We've become very good friends over the last 12 years. Savannah, Laura told me that when Savannah found out the trial was over, from her mom, Savannah turned to her grandmother, Laura's mother, and said, "I get my mom back."
That's awesome. That's awesome. But it sounds like there may be an appeal coming. You guys will be ready, right?
I mean, obviously, anytime that you have a trial, the defense is entitled to an appeal, and we'll cross that bridge when we have to get to it.
Josh Jones, Laura Keck, thank you for your service, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, that's all we have for now. We'll come back with you next week. Take care.
Muddy River News. Our home, our news.